To pray, there's no angels where I go, only pieces that are broken, scattered dreams across the floor. I'm home.
The world just keeps getting stranger and stranger. Then again, it just gets more normal for me. In all of my time, in all of my years, this is the only place where I feel truly like myself. In fact, I do remember what happened roughly around that age. And it was actually pretty interesting. I learned that this place has no heroes, no villains. This is just a place full of monsters. There are heroes, you can consider them, and there are villains. However, the heroes play both sides, and the villains, sometimes they play both. Then again, the monsters are simply put on a string, just like I was, just like how I am. But one day, I broke it. I simply went up again, and started talking, started reacting, and simply understanding more and more information. I've met a man they consider to be a god, but even to me, he is not that. He's below me. That's all I can really say. Me and my brother did have a hard time, but we managed. Although I do miss him. I've tried bringing him back, but whatever force did that to him, it's irreversible. My power can stabilize him for a few seconds, showing that I'm getting stronger. Before then, it was barely even a second. Now, let's hope I can find out more. Otherwise, my hunt is just gonna get a lot bloodier. Now, alrighty, hello everybody. This is Kirusho here, and yes, that was a very long intro. I am aware. However, this is going to be where the story is going to be picking up, with a bit of a time skip. Now, the O5 Council, they've authorized and granted a bit of the things Midoriya and his brother have asked. However, Midoriya and his brother had to show off more and more of their reality-bending powers, barely limiting themselves to the surface. The SCP Foundation already considered them to be Keeters, but with the fact that they can't even contain them properly, they are now Thaumiel level problems. And these two have been going through numerous tests with many SCPs. And surprise, surprise, you had SCP-113, the gender-bending rock. Yeah, surprise, surprise, it does work on them. However, the two can simply just snap it back. Then, Midoriya and his brother met SCP-1762. There be dragons. Now, whenever things begin to fail in that world, in that plane of reality, Midoriya and his brother went in. And, well, the adventure they went on was quite entertaining. But the stories they've had to at least share or give away, yeah, they're barely even scratching the surface. However, they did contain and secure the SCP. So whatever they were trying to do to humanity to keep them safe is no longer required. In fact, the thing that's kind of dangerous about the SCP now is that it's trying to visit us. They still do appear as tiny dragons. However, over time, they turn into tiny lizards. which can fly and breathe fire. So you still do need to contain them. Now, with that being said, you do also have Midoriya and his brother going to Infinite IKEA and many others. Especially that one time Midoriya remembers him and his brother parting ways in the morning. When he came back, the toaster was smashed, and his brother avoided anything gluten for about a month. Yeah, that was a weird day. Anyways, now, it has been 2 years. Midoriya and his brother are at the age of 10. And, well, the O5 Council have finally approved of Midoriya and his brother looking with and speaking with SCP-343, commonly referred to as God. Now, with that being said, Midoriya also does begin to think. This SCP does want to talk with them. In fact, it's a bit concerning. The man is going to be just like us, right? Well, they call him God. So, I mean, I would guess so? Yeah, but if he was the real one, or is the real one, couldn't he just simply not be contained? Now, one of the people sitting next to Midoriya actually does shoulder check him, nudging their arm into his shoulder as Midoriya looks at them. The guard then saying that the SCP they're talking about, he is a very polite man. And in fact, he's had a few conversations with the man, talking with him. Long story short, he gave up a lot of his power and we keep him safe here. In fact, well, talk to him about it and you will understand. He'll give you a presentation. But all the stuff that he can do is still extraordinary. Kind of like how your two abilities are. Now, eventually they do arrive at the facility and get off the plane. As they also do see a few of Arm Foundation security guards waiting for Midoriya and his brother. Now, the Foundation member here, yeah. The security guards aren't here to protect Midoriya and his brother. They're here to stop the Psycho Doctor. As he basically runs forwards and almost knocks the two over, trying to introduce himself as Dr. Bright. Yeah, that's not fun. Anyways, now, Dr. Bright introduces himself and speaks to these two for roughly a couple of seconds, wanting to know more about their abilities and other things, as the guards basically point their guns at him. A lot of red dots appearing all over his body as they tell him to step away from the two SCPs. Now, the doctor backs down, reluctantly, as Midoriya and his brother are escorted into the facility, and are told that the small containment cell is, well, theirs to share. They do know about the reality bending capabilities, and it should only take them a few minutes to redo it. Midoriya and his brother looking around, and both of them waving out their hands, as they immediately have everything move underneath them. It's like reality is on a treadmill, and they're standing still. The area completely moved around to him. As the two stop directly in front of the room, opening the door, Midoriya waving out his hand, recreating their home. Now, with that being said, the guard does walk in after them, and see all this. Along with, surprise, surprise, walking through the door there are many others lining the wall. And he looks at the numbers above them. Cite 14, 12, 18, 17, 1, 2, so on and so forth. Now, with that being said, that is simply just a few things they've tried to understand. Midoriya and his brother simply telling him exactly what that is. Portals to different Foundation locations. In fact, I guess you could call it a fold in reality. Now, before the man can even ask any more questions, yeah, Midoriya and his brother are already outside the facility. Outside of the room. As they look to see the containment room for SCP-343. Both of them walking in and seeing the man, who simply is looking around, before looking towards the glass and asking the doctor exactly where are the people he is supposed to be talking to. He doesn't really see them. He heard someone walk in, but, well, there's no one there. The doctor and the rest of the Foundation's staff confused, telling 343 that the two young boys who walked in are clearly visible to them, telling him that he simply possibly cannot see them. This might be the same effects as 682. The reptile. Yes, I'm quite aware. He is not one of mine. And if you do claim that these two are something like me, well, I didn't invent them. I didn't create them. So they are not mine. I am sorry, doctors. I do not believe that this interview will be possible. However, I do not want to waste their time. Now, the Foundation does ask if Midori and his brother can see the SCP, to which they both state yes. Now, after a long-winded attempt to translate, the Foundation acting as a mediator, I believe that's the right word. Yeah, I think so. Basically, they talk to the Foundation talks for them, asking and trying to answer questions. Now, that didn't go too well, along with Midori and his brother trying to, well, interact with other SCPs. Some safe, and mostly harmless, as the Foundation does want to actually try something out. A test they don't believe they have conducted with Midoriya yet, nor his brother. Midoriya has been shot at by various things, almost crushed. Once they had Midoriya put into a machine, and see what happened. Midoriya died, but he simply stated that the results of the experiment were that he came out less than stellar. Yeah. Him basically giving a false answer. Anything that he's been through, it hasn't been fun, nor has it been easy. And this is one of the most lighthearted tests they can possibly think of doing. In fact, the Foundation themselves see it as a reward. Now, as for what they do, the Foundation tests Midoriya against SCP-999. Ah, I love that SCP. He eats M&Ms out of a dog bowl. I can't. There's just something so simple about this SCP that I love. Anyways, now, Midoriya and his brother do walk into the chamber, seeing the SCP. Midoriya's brother clearly being happy and ecstatic to see it, and thinking that it's actually very cool, as the SCP jumps onto his brother, him having a happy, fun-loving time. Now, as for Midoriya, he actually does somewhat move away from the SCP. and act negatively towards it. The Foundation actually marking that down. The first person they've met who has the abilities of a reality bender, who does not like SCP-999, wondering if this is simply part of the Scarlet King's powers, or whatever he does to these people. Now, with that being said, after a bit of convincing and, well, shit-talking from Midoriya's brother, Midoriya does actually jump into 999. As soon as he does so, however, it's not happy or fun-loving for him. In fact, he's beginning to see some of his worst memories. Some things that don't add up, as you can say. He sees memories of his mother, and memories of his father, a few doctors, along with him being rushed away, along with having to take something, and, well, getting flashes of a hospital. Unsure as to what that is, as Midoriya basically immediately just blows around the containment chamber. The force Midoriya created threw 999 in every single direction, as he simply just stands there with his eyes glowing, and breathing very, very heavily. As the Foundation, their alarms do begin to go off, and they do try and calm Midoriya down. Not really sure as to what happened, nor why it happened. Midoriya simply breathing very heavily, before just looking around for a second and looking towards his brother. His brother looks completely shocked to see this power, let alone what he just did. Midoriya being scared for a second, looking down at his hands, before they're just shaking. Midoriya is expressing fear. And, well, he just says that he's sorry. He can't deal with this, throwing out his hand, and disappearing from reality. Now, as for Midoriya's brother, yeah. The Foundation do want to understand what happened to him. He seems to be one of the very few people who do not like that effect of 999. In fact, well, they believe even some of the people who hate 999 experience this joy feeling. However, they're just too disgusted, if you can call it that, to express it. There's not really much solid evidence, since a researcher who's been part of this experiment, yeah, he almost resigned if he was not taken off of the team. Now, with that being said, Midoriya is actually sitting at the edge of a cliff, overlooking it, and simply thinking, for a few minutes. Those things that he saw, within his entire lifespan of 35,000 years, he has not seen anything like that, let alone felt that way. He felt numb. He felt like though nothing was even there, trying to understand it himself. It feels like someone put a blender in his brain and, well, knocked something loose. Why? Now, after a bit of time, Midoriya actually does have the idea to head back to the Foundation, as he does actually bring up his hand and flick his wrist. Nothing even happening. Midoriya confused for a minute, looking down at his hands before throwing them out once more, and flicking his wrist. His powers aren't even working. What is going on? This can't be. What? Midoriya just turning around, thinking that the Foundation is here, and they have reality anchors. Now, To his surprise, there's no one there. And using telekinesis and some of the few abilities he has, he simply blows away the area directly in front of him, uprooting everything for around, what is it, 2,000 feet, and simply seeing nothing there, before turning invisible and flying off. Now, Midoriya does fly to the nearest Foundation site. As soon as they do find him in restricted airspace, Midoriya simply uncloaks, and the Foundation do get a reading on him. The object is vaguely humanoid, and whenever it does land, Midoriya is taken into immediate custody, and seen as one of those reality-bending SCPs, before approval from the O5 Council gets him put out of his restraints. And they try to understand what happened through the test. It does make sense that he had a negative reaction, however the outburst was different. Now, this is odd, and Dr. Bright does want to run his own test on the other reality bender. Since the other one left the facility, he wanted to be able to conduct one that he thought of himself. What happens if the two try and fight over a piece of matter to, manipulate? If one wants the matter to be a solid while the other wants to be a liquid, what would happen? Would they just simply turn into something like a snow-like substance? Both solid and grabbable, but still in somewhat of a liquid form? Yeah. He has quite a few notes written down that he does want to try. However, yeah. The O5 is not having any of his shit. Now. Anyway, guys, with that being said, I do believe that I can leave this part off of here. And I do hope you guys enjoyed. Now, what is going on with Midoriya? Why is his power acting up? How is that even possible? Is it? Now, is it really just some physical ailment, or is it some mental trauma? That is something interesting to look into.